Okay, Council, it is 2 o'clock, so we will call to order our regular meeting of Council, and we'll start by just recognizing and appreciating that we are holding our meeting today from the traditional territories of the Sechot and Hoopachasit First Nations. Councillors, are there any late items to add to our agenda? Seeing none, I know we have one late item from staff. Twyla?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Correspondence from Catherine Laurie regarding the DVP that's on the agenda for Woodland.
Wonderful. Thank you. And should we add that to be received just under correspondence for information, or should that be attached to the development?
We will actually attach it to the application. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that is item 4. Great. Okay, with that, would somebody like to move approval of our agenda as amended?
Move approval as amended.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Poon, seconded by Councillor Washington. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And adoption of minutes. We have minutes from the special meeting held at 12:30 p.m. and the regular meeting held at 2 p.m. on January 17th, 2022. Moved to adopt by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Poon. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. And that brings us to public input period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council, and we accommodate 4 speakers for a maximum of 3 minutes each. Would any members of the public like to speak? Okay, come on forward. First.
Hi, I'm just going to say my name's Joseph. I think you have my address on file, so you don't really need that. So I'm just going to say my name's Joseph. I live in Port Alberni. Port Alberni, I know we've got OCP happening, also have a budget thing happening. So something that I've noticed, because I walk in the community, I tend to leave my car at home and walk as much as I can, and by choice. But there's a lot of people in this community, it's not by choice. They have reasons they can't drive. And so they have to depend on transit and walking. And I don't know if many of you do that here on council and city staff. Get out and walk the streets and try and access things when there's snowfall. And I know it's a big issue. The city does a great job of trying to keep the streets clean, and occasionally I think there's some sidewalks that may be looked after. But if you walk Johnson, walk Gertrude or 3rd, there's a lot of people in our community that have to access places to go, and they are horrendous, impassable really. And I'm able-bodied. I can climb over stuff. I can do that. At times, I actually have walked out on Johnson on the road because it's that hard to get through. So I'd like city to, perhaps in the budget, say, okay, major streets, Johnson, where buses dropping people off, or 3rd and Gertrude. Major streets where people walking. I've watched ladies with baby buggies trying to get across Roger, where there's public access to go across Roger and Gertrude with baby buggies, trying to climb over a mountain of snow that's been piled up. And I've talked to some of the businesses as I'm walking, and I can name names if you like, but I think they know who they are. Prominent businesses in town that don't even shovel their sidewalks. And even to the point where they're piling the snow on the sidewalk from their driveway accessing their business. All the snow melted. I came across piles of snow on the sidewalk. And I know bylaws can be phoned and said, please go out and do something. But and a lot of residents do look after their sidewalks well. I live on a street where there's 2 80-year-olds in their 80s to get out and shovel their snow before anybody else. But businesses, and I know there is a bylaw, I think that it's supposed to be, people are supposed to clean their sidewalks, businesses such. And so I'd just like City Council to look into that. Maybe it could be in the budget to say there's a few major roads that we can look after. Gyro Williams Park, a mess. You cannot pass that on the sidewalk whatsoever. Great for tobogganing down the other side, and this side not even passable. You have people in wheelchairs, walkers, scooters, mobility issues, or budgetary reasons or whatever are not able to drive. My wife was a little offended at it when we drove. I said, look at the mess of that. And she said, well, maybe they can just stay home. I said, are you kidding me? They can. Why don't you stay home? Yes, not just about cars, it's about people. We're a very diverse community, and we have a lot of people that rely on foot transportation, transit and stuff like that. So I'd love to see just our major roads looked after a little better. And I'd like council to take that in consideration with their budget plans, whatever that looks like.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Appreciate that perspective. I think we had Catherine next.
My concern is in regards to the permit application for variance of the frontage and the exterior of the property to develop at 5535 Woodland Crescent. And I'm concerned because we already have an issue of inadequate street parking. We have adjacent to that property, there is a care facility that most of the day has 4 or 5 people parking on the street. They are right now taking up available space in front of the little park. If they are proposing, and I guess that's already been passed, I'm not sure about that, 11 townhomes in this area with only 14 designated parking spaces, and the only access, from what I understand, is from Woodland Crescent east, it's going to be a real problem. They already want to reduce it, which would be equivalent to a car length, which is 2.7 or 2.8 meters. I'm really concerned because with that additional need for people in that proposed residence, most people are 2-car families. I don't know where they're going to park except maybe in front of me. I've already had a problem in the past with people across the way that were running an Airbnb, and they were parking right by my drive. I too had a really huge issue with the snow removal in our area. I even phoned the city but didn't get very far. They plow our roads and leave 4 feet of snow in front of our properties. Most of us in that block there were in our 70s. And I'm disabled, so it's very, very difficult. If this goes ahead and we've got a problem already with parking, I don't know what's going to happen in these inclement conditions, which I think with climate changing, we're going to see more of. So I'm very concerned about this application personally. And the other thing in regards to that whole application, which is not really directed in this, is I don't know why they don't designate certain green space within a development, especially when it's that small. So we're going to have families in there, they're 3-bedroom families with all these children. Where are they going to go? There's one little play area which is behind my property. So anyway, that's the only thing I really wanted to say. I was really, really concerned about the parking issues and the congestion in that area already, and the difficulty too that it's going to present with all those places going in, getting back onto River Road at some point. It may be prudent for the council to evaluate a better access to River Road, whether it's a stop sign, not just a stop sign, but a light facility, because trying to get out there right now during the summer is impossible. We have to go all the way up Fell Road and around Comport. So please consider these issues. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak today? Yep, come on forward.
I'm Perry. I'm from Dicon Construction. I'm the developer at 5535 Woodland Crescent. The project meets all the parking requirements. All the units have their own personal garage, and there is adequate on-site parking. A part of the strata plan will there be no off-site parking for any members from that development. That's going to be in the strata and enforceable by the strata. So there's as far as the latest concerns about there not being or parking on the street, that will not be allowed and will be enforced by the strata. All righty. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And we do have room for one additional speaker if anyone else in the public would like to speak today. Okay, seeing none, we have no delegations today, so we'll move on to unfinished business. And we have one item, Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Resolution, Notice and Submission. Twyla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So at your last meeting, Council put forward 3 motions that were supported by resolution to submit to AVICC for consideration at the upcoming convention. During that time, the deadline for submissions was the 28th of January. Councillor Corbeil had brought to our attention that one of the motions that was being considered had been considered previously at another convention, so perhaps Council would like to rescind submitting the helicopter BC ambulance service motion. So that is on your agenda, looking for a formal rescind of Council's previous direction and noting that the deadline has now passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone like to make this motion? Councillor Corbeil.
I would like to make the motion to rescind the resolution. If I have a seconder, I'll just explain a little bit. Thank you. After we passed the resolution, I was following up with a fellow from the industry who's been very involved in this file, and he pointed out there was a similar resolution in 2017. It maybe had more of an industry bent to it. So I still would like to, maybe for the UBCM, think of crafting a new resolution. The response from government in 2017 was something to the effect that 3 of their 4 helicopters were equipped with night vision, but they still put the onus on industry through WorkSafe BC regulations to provide evacuation if a forest worker, miner, etc. was injured in an isolated area, which I think the flaw in that is, yes, you could probably get a helicopter in, but you're likely not going to get a helicopter in with advanced life support assistance. And yeah, probably now is not the time to pass this resolution, but maybe going forward I'll do a little bit of research and recraft it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have that moved and seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing any more comments? None. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So we'll move on to staff reports. Item number 1, accounts. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated January 31, 2022 be received, and checks numbering 149,863 to 149,994 inclusive, and payments of accounts totaling $1,209,778.87 be approved. And before I get a seconder, I'd like to ask Director of Finance McGifford to just explain one of the checks that we wrote.
After you get a seconder. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Poon.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Andrew.
In reference to a TriTech payment, that is our contractor that is responsible for the lagoon upgrades. That is there's 2 components within that check. One is the holdback that is being released because of the work being completed and confirmed by our project engineer. And that accounts for about 40%, and then 60% is just some change orders associated with the project. All in line with the costing that was brought forward in September of 2021.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from council? Okay, seeing none on the motion then, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And we'll move on to item number 2 from the RCMP. We have Inspector Rochette's report.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, council members. So today I'm just going to go over some of the numbers. We're going to be looking at policing activities for October to December 2021, as well as I'm going to go over some of the numbers for the entire year of 2021 to do some comparison with the previous year, and then I will answer any of your questions. So some of the highlights, as you can see, so out of 2,700 calls for service, 2,333 of these calls occurred in the city of Port Alberni, which is approximately 86% of our calls for service. The number of criminal offenses, it's actually a mistake of mine when I was reviewing my notes, are up by 6%, not down by 6%, compared to the same quarter in 2020. The number of property crime offenses are up by 33% for the quarter compared to 2020. I'll break it down later on in my presentation in regards of what had transpired when it comes to property crime offenses. And number of violent offenses are down by 20% compared to the same quarter in 2020. So like I mentioned, total calls for service, 2,333, which is less than last year, which is at 2,659 for the same quarter. Violent crime, 114, which is a reduction of 20% compared to the same quarter last year. Like I mentioned earlier, property crime gone up to 428, which is an increase of 33%. Other criminal code, 215 compared to 182 this quarter. Drug offenses, when I mention drug offenses, is drug trafficking, 12 compared to 11. And then for total criminal code, 691 last quarter from 2020 to 735 the last quarter of this year. So like I mentioned earlier, it's an increase of 6%. As far as criminal traffic, which includes any criminal code charges related to driving offenses, which is driving while prohibited or impaired driving. As you can see, the number have gone up from 18 to 28. Now, if we break it down a little bit further, as far as the violent crime, assaults gone up from 59 to 65. Out of those 65 assaults, 45 of them were domestic violence related. And so if you look at 45, which is in par with the same quarter the previous year, which was at 47. So we've been kind of status quo when it comes to domestic assaults. Slight increase for assaults in general. Assault with weapon, assault causing bodily harm, slight reduction from 13 to 10. Harassment, again, slight reduction from 20 to 14. Robbery, we've had none in the fourth quarter 2021. Sex offenses, which is sexual assault, sexual interference, and which is go from 6 to 7, so it's been pretty much status quo as far as the numbers. And othering threats went from 32 to 36, which shows us a slight increase. I already discussed domestic violence. Property crime, that's when we've seen a spike for the fourth quarter. And this is break it down a little bit further, and you'll see there's been an increase in the majority of the crime reported on this report. Auto theft have gone from 3 to 5. Bike theft, 6 to 12. Now we're going to look at break and enters. That's when we've seen a spike of 30, quite significant actually, compared to the same quarter last year, which was really, really low if you look at the number historically. But break and enter business went from 4 to 11. Break and enter residence from 5 to 13. And break on and enter for other, which is usually shed, garage, unattached outbuildings, from 1 to 9. So if you put all the break and enters together, it's for a total of 33 compared to the same quarter last year, which was 10, which is obviously 10 was historically quite low if you look back at 2019 and 2018 where the numbers were in the 50s. So it's a significant increase compared to last year. It's still less than the historical numbers, but it's something that we've focused on the last couple of weeks here and made some arrests, and hopefully these numbers will turn around here for the next, for the first quarter of 2022. Mischief to property, vandalism. So we've seen a spike when it comes to vandalism from 84 to 142. Theft, 71, 76, pretty similar to the same quarter last year. Possession of stolen property, 2 to 5. Shoplifting, from 10 to 34. Another aspect that has been quite disappointing since we've worked so hard in the past, especially with community policing, our manager Dave Cousson has gone around to neighborhoods and distributing letters when it comes to theft from vehicles, went from 28 to 52. Just trying to encourage people to make sure they don't leave any valuables in the vehicles in plain view, and making sure that they lock doors. And so unfortunately there's been a bit of a spike. It's still quite less than what we saw in 2019 for the same quarter, but it's something that we're going to have to focus again and maybe try to find different strategies here to reduce that number. Other criminal code cause disturbance, slight reduction from 111 to 99. Breach of probation, we've seen an increase from 18 to 36, and breach of bail stays pretty status quo with 58 to 53. As you can see, if you add 53 and 36, a fairly high number. We put a lot of emphasis in the last several months to focus on working with our probation officers and making sure to, if we have any offenders being released on probation, that they comply with the conditions they've been released with. So our crime reduction unit, as well as our general duty members, have been going around especially focusing on curfew checks, making sure people, if they have to be home between 10 and 6, they actually are home. And we do several checks a night with several individuals. So that's where we've seen a spike, unfortunately, with some people not complying with those conditions. Intoxicated in public, 46 to 35, so a slight reduction as well. Now I'm going to go over some of the statistics for the year for 2021. As you can see, the total calls for service have gone down slightly from 11,000, just over 11,000 to 10,433. As you can see when you break it down, like all the numbers did go down compared to 2020. Violent crime has gone down slightly from 536 to 524. Property crime as well did go down, even though the last quarter we've seen an increase in numbers. In totality, we've had a reduction in property crimes. Other criminal codes did go slightly down from 827 to 756. Drug offenses have been basically the same. And for a total of criminal code offenses of 2,896 compared to just over 3,000 in 2020, which is a reduction of approximately 5%. And we've seen a slight decrease in criminal traffic as far as criminal code charges when it's related to traffic violations. Couple comments I want to make when we look at the numbers for 2020 and 2021 is we had last year the Justin George inquest, and I know the total number of prisoners being kept at the Port Alberni RCMP cells has been an issue, and it's been discussed, and I know there's been a lot of things have been put in place, especially we look at the sobering center. That's been really helpful for us as far as the number of prisoners, and if someone's intoxicated, is there really a point for someone to be at cells if there's somewhere else safer for them to be lodged? And as well as we always try to reach out to family members if they can take it. The other aspect too is the last couple of years we've been provided with some increase in for officer discretion as far as putting condition for release. Historically, there's a lot of conditions that as police officer would have authority to issue to offenders that unfortunately someone had to, if you wanted someone to be on a curfew, they needed to, or have a no-go, let's say City of Port Alberni, they would have to go to court, appear in front of a judge. Some of these things that were changed a couple of years ago and give us a bit of more of a discretion, a better ability to release offenders instead of having to bring them to cells and then to have to stay us and appear in front of a judge within 24 hours. So in 2021, we had 830 prisoners compared to in 2020, we had just over 1,000 prisoners, 1,005. And then if you look at 2019, we had 1,232 prisoners, and in 2018, we had 1,338 prisoners. So, and then within 4 years, you see a reduction of almost 500 prisoners, so which is a fairly high number, which is, I see it as a positive story, is obviously if there's no other options, they have to come to cells, they have to come to cells, but if options are available, we really try to released or get some assistance for other agencies. We've worked as close as we could with West Coast General Hospital in regards of mental health calls and as well as our community response team, that instead of keeping someone in cells when they're going to a mental health crisis, they can be just taken to hospital and seeing a doctor, which is seen more as a medical issue than a criminal issue. Finally, some of the numbers, briefly, I'm just going to go over quite quickly, in comparison between, and these numbers here, it's Port Alberni RCMP, so which includes obviously the city and the regional district, But as I mentioned, a strong majority of our calls for service are within the city. And so we've seen a reduction in a lot of, like weapons offenses have gone down by 32%. Property crime did go down by 3%. Unfortunately, persons violent crime, like I mentioned earlier, assaults have gone up by 1%. But you see the same trends across the island as well. If you look at those numbers, it did go up as well for the island by up to 3%. One aspect that we've kind of went the opposite way compared to the island in general is robbery. We've seen a reduction of 30%, but across the island we've seen an increase by 22%. So it's kind of going the opposite way of what we've seen across Vancouver Island. But like I mentioned earlier, break and enter, business, other, and residential, we've seen a decrease, and we put them in totality to approximately 10% compared to previous year, which has been a positive story and something we're really trying to work on for 2022 and in the future. So when you compare to the island, some of the break and enter, their stats, some have gone down, but some have gone up. So when you look at in the totality, I'm pretty pleased with the numbers that have, in relation to 2021. Obviously, there's work to be done, and we're going to keep focusing on reducing especially the person violent crime, and as well as working quite closely with a partner when it comes to property crimes. And when I mention partners, working with especially the probation office and making sure that offenders are well managed. And as you're well aware, like majority of crime are committed by a really small portion of the population, and just try to refocus our attention to that. So now if there's any questions, comments, concerns.
Okay, thank you so much. Firstly, I just want to say thank you for mentioning the Jocelyn George inquest that happened, and thanks. I know you attended part of it, and so did Inspector Hunter as well. I think that what I learned sitting and being a part of most of that inquest was really that it highlighted a collective kind of failing of all of the systems that were supposed to be there to take care of Jocelyn George. As we know, she was only 18 when she passed away. And the city of Port Alberni specifically had some recommendations that came as a result of that. We're waiting on a staff report for our next steps and moving forward. I know RCMP had some recommendations, and there are several other organizations with recommendations as well. Just wondering what you see as maybe a next step in carrying some of those recommendations forward, and how we can all collaborate. I mean, I know there were island health recommendations. There were an array of agencies that were named as having specific areas where we could work together to improve. So I'm just wondering if it's, is it a working group that needs to happen as kind of a next step, since everyone has their recommendations now, and to come together on those things, or?
I think it's a great idea for sure, a working group. Well, the biggest challenge that I've seen and experienced is the cross path of criminal activities, and then there's some issue with addiction and mental health that unfortunately a lot of people kind of get stuck in the middle of. I know there's a lot of recommendation in regards of a crisis response team and having better access to that type of assistance. So I think that one aspect that I'd like to see in the future that we focus on, that like a lot of issues, a lot of time, unfortunately, when they come to us, it's too late. It's obviously a criminal issue, but a lot of it's related to its medical concerns, and it's a buildup of years of not having received proper treatment, and that's something we need to work on. As far as like we've seen positive results when I look at the social navigation program, and those are just samples. That's something we just need to expand on, basically. And for us, it's obviously the challenge, especially when it comes to the RCMP, is we come and go a lot of times. So it's just to make sure that there's a solid base, and then whoever's in place, the RCMP will always be part of. But I try to walk away from, if it's specifically an officer that gets really, like the social navigation program, we have a few officers that are extremely involved in that program, but I want to make sure that the detachment is involved, and so when these officers do move on, and it's going to go strong, and that's why we would like to see other partners to be quite included in that. Obviously the city and the regional district and Vancouver Island Authority and mental health. So it's already in place to a certain extent, but something I would like to see expand for sure in the future.
Yeah, thank you. And I think there's some really good progress that's been made already with the Social Navigator program. Obviously, I know KUAS is working with our CMP as well on another similar program, and we heard from Deb Hamilton about another kind of program that's starting up in the community as well. So I think there's some really good work going on, and just I think it's important for us to not forget about the recommendations that did come forward. It was hard to listen to, you know, I think it was 5 days of the inquest, and really just highlighting how Jocelyn, even just in the last, you know, week before she passed away, bounced from one agency to another, and no real, you know, collective follow through or one person to be there. So it just really highlighted some of the gaps that exist, and I think there's some opportunity, a lot of opportunities to move forward from there. So thank you. Councillor Washington and then Councillor Paulson.
Thank you. Inspector, just under your theft from vehicles, is the majority of those vehicles left unlocked and it's sort of our own fault?
Well, I wouldn't say it's your own fault, but yes, they're unlocked. So it's, yeah. But no, like someone can walk in the neighborhood and go through 90, 100 vehicles. If it's locked, they're just going to move on. Or if there's nothing, they look. If you see a laptop, you know, they may be willing, he or she willing to smash a window. But the reality is there's majority, almost all the cases are related to unlocked vehicles and just easily accessible.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson.
I know I ask this question quite often when we see an uptick in certain crimes, and I look at the break and enters and shoplifting, kind of combining them. Looking at 2020, am I wrong in making the assumption that there are certain individuals that are doing this, and that in 2020 they were probably in enforced accommodation outside of our community, and that they may be back? And maybe that's why we see an uptick. Recidivism, I think, is a problem, and you probably know who these people are when they come back into the community and you see a spike. Would that be a partial explanation there?
Yes, for sure. That's why I mentioned earlier that we really try to work with, especially with probation, because they're aware when people do return. Like if they provide us with an address, we, with our crime reduction unit, they try to confirm right away it's an actual address, because we've had incidents where it's fictitious address or they don't reside there. So yeah, we try to work with them and stay on top of them for sure, because like you mentioned, like you see upticks. Obviously in 2020, I think we have to be careful when we look at the numbers, because of a lot of restrictions after, you know, with COVID and people moving around, that kind of stuff. So I think there was obviously an impact on us as far as like, you saw a crime rate across the board going down, but so it's something we're gonna have to stay on top of, and it's a cycle, unfortunately, and you're absolutely right, so try to.
Councillor Solda.
Thanks for the report, Inspector. A couple of questions. Shoplifters. By the looks of it, it seems that they are getting bolder and bolder, like they're just, I'm just taking it, do whatever you want with me, and I'm hearing that from some of the merchants, like they just walk in and let's just go shopping and leave. And of course the merchants can't do anything because they're told to stand back, right? And do you find that? Is that happening? Do you see it, hear of it?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, you know, and obviously, you know, COVID had an impact as far as the economy and access to resources, but yeah, people are getting bolder, and you're right. That's always the messaging. Try not to. You can try to stop them, obviously, but if they get aggressive, you just walk away. Because I've seen incidents where, you know, with shoplifting, something minor becomes suddenly it's an assault, and you know, a security guard, somebody's injured. Is it really worth it? But so we try to work with the different stores. What we've seen too in the past sometimes is if it's something minor, they don't call the police. If the person is compliant and oh sorry, they just do it in the house. They give them a trespass notice, do not return, and they don't call the police. So obviously in this quarter we see that they're starting out to call the police again. It's just because if it's a repeat offenders, then obviously what they've been doing is not working. So then they contact us, and we deal with that whatever situation.
Okay, because a lot of merchants have videos now, and do they actually work 4 years for the police, or is it worthwhile, or what's your recommendation?
No, for sure, CCTV is a reality of almost all our investigations now. It makes our life way easier. It's really hard to debate when you can just watch it instead of watching on TV what occurred. So it's always the first source that for evidence, and for everything we investigate. People have CCTV. It's surprising how private residents do have cameras as well. So, but yeah, it's always a positive. And if there's a store where there's issues, that's always the first thing we mention to them.
Okay.
You can get cameras for, moderate price, and it makes it way easier for court. And a lot of the time when it's on video, it saves going to court. It's guilty plea, and then you can move on from there.
Okay, and the other one, I have to kind of set up a scenario here. It actually happened in Port Alberni. Someone got a call saying, hey, my grandson is I'm in jail, I need some money. Could you send it? And I will send someone to come and pick it up. And of course, it's an elderly person. In this case, it wasn't. It was somebody midlife. And, okay, I'll help you. How much money? And I think it was $2,500 or something like that they wanted. And they hadn't heard from him for a long time. So the voice was crackly, and sounded like they had a cold. And so, we'll get you the money. And they said, okay, we'll send somebody, just leave it outside the door and we'll pick it up. So she made a call and told a couple of other people, and they said, are you nuts? This is not real, right? And it never happened, but you see it online. I had a call like that for a First Nation gentleman who said, hey, Cindy, I need your help. And this was a few years back. I need to get home or something like this. I can't remember, but could you lend me some money? So I actually emailed him, and he says, no, I'm here in Port Alberni.
Yeah.
So are you seeing that in Port Alberni? Are you seeing that all over? Because, there's a lot of elderly people who are not in touch with grandchildren or relatives, and then suddenly they get a call. Of course, they're going to go and help. So are you hearing that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've seen cases that, sometimes it's quite surprising with the dollar value. Especially since, like you mentioned, it's been in the news, we're trying to do on a semi-regular basis, especially if we see an uptick in calls, related to a specific scam, that we go to the media and try to educate the public. My messaging is, if you're not sure, call us, ask the question, does it make sense? And sometimes just because there's emotions involved, you don't really see it, and then from the outside, it's quite obvious that it's a scam. So, find someone you can trust, or just call the police and this is what I've received. Does it make sense? Especially with someone related to in custody, we can assist with that. So that would be my suggestion for locally, for sure.
Well, in
and
this
when
case,
in doubt,
this case, they told him not to call the family because it's too embarrassing for the family to know, but she did, and lucky she did. But the thing is, I'm so concerned about the people in the community, the seniors and those who will be taken for all they can get, right?
No, absolutely, and I know that
Thank
we
you.
try to work with seniors as much as possible in relation to that. Unfortunately, it's not always seniors, but a lot of time that's, especially when something online, a website that looks so real, and I've received email at home, it looks really quite, I could see sitting in front, reading it, and I could see why someone would be unsure, but anything like that, phone calls or emails or website, when you're not sure, call your RCMP, or there's an anti-fraud website as well if you're comfortable enough. There's a phone number and there's a website you can go in, and they have all the major scams. It's kind of the same, 4 or 5 that they come for a while and they go away and they switch to something else, and then they always go back to the same. So.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson.
Just a quick question, and I know you like to bring this up, Cindy, is body cams. Can you give us an update on that? I know the Port Alberni was at least a year ago or 2 years ago down the list. Is there any indication if and when it might happen here, or it is being introduced, I think, in stages in different jurisdictions? So just kind of where are we at with that? And I know there's some policy and stuff that really needs to be ironed out before they're actually used and those sorts of things. So are you aware of, is it coming to Port Alberni, or is it on the island or in British Columbia yet?
So I've received zero information since what I shared last time. Obviously, once I know more, I'll share, Council, and because there'll be costs related to that as well. And I know I'm a strong proponent that if we have a chance to be one of the first detachments, that I'll be interested in participating in whatever has been proposed. So, but it's been zero information.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for your report today.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item number 3 from our development planner. We have development permit number 21-06 for 3774 12th Avenue. Welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. For Council's consideration today is a development permit for the property at 3774 12th Avenue, and the applicant is AV&BD Electric. And this property is actually phase 2 of an existing multifamily development tucked away neatly behind the Shoppers Drug Mart location. The existing development is 2 triplex buildings, and the development is looking to add another 2 triplex buildings for a total of 4 buildings. With this phase 2 of the development, they'll be adding a total of 6 2-bedroom dwelling units. And this is an overview of the property. In red is the proposed phase 2, and the dotted orange line is phase 1, and you can see the 2 threeplex buildings that already exist, fairly close to the McDonald's restaurant location. And from the sky, you can see the 2 buildings in phase 1 there, and then the subject property outlined in red once again. And actually, right below the property in red, there's a vacant lot behind Shoppers. That actually has a house on it now, so the property is fully enclosed. A development permit was first issued for the property, that's phase 1, in 2008. Then phase 1 was actually built in 2012. A development permit was issued for phase 2 in 2018, but after 2 years, that expired in 2020 because they didn't start development. This is the proposed layout. They're just adding 2 buildings on the site with a common driveway down the middle. And the form and character of the buildings is very typical of residential multifamily development. In fact, these are small, very similar to a rancher, but it's a threeplex building. And the access is provided from 12th Avenue. So cars will come down a fairly lengthy driveway past phase 1, and then past what is currently, I believe, the VHA offices, and then into the development where it will dead end. All the required parking will be provided on site, as you can see here, highlighted in the site plan, and there'll be some landscaping around the outside, trees and shrubs to buffer it from adjacent development. This application meets all the requirements of the OCP and zoning bylaw. It will create 6 dwelling units, and the applicant may be required to install a fire hydrant during construction, but that will be determined by engineering. That's just because that long driveway makes it, it's quite a long ways to run a hose from 12th Avenue. So they may need to install some more fire access. And staff support the approval of Development Permit 2106, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Solta.
I think it's great, but I just have a question, and I'm not sure, is it two-car parking or one-car parking? Because a lot of places have two cars, right? A lot of people have two cars, so where would they park?
Yeah, so the way the parking is laid out, there's driveway spaces, for each house, and the houses also have double garages as well.
Okay.
So when you add it up, it ends up being enough parking for the residents there. But it is quite a small site. It's about 1.2 acres.
So guests or company would park on the side of the road or something like that?
There's one spot for visitor parking at the end of the common driveway, but otherwise, if they have overflow, they can't fit in their driveways, then it would be a long walk down to 12th Avenue. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Solda, would you like to read the motion?
All right. Okay, Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council authorize the issuance of development permit number 2106 and that the Director of Corporate Services be authorized to sign the permit, including the plans on Schedule B, prepared by Architect Type Design, issued for 3774 12th Avenue and dated April 1st, 2021, subject to the City of Port Alberni receiving the required landscaping security in the amount of $9,510.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Paulson. Any final comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. We will move on to item number 4 from the development planner. We have development variance permit number 109 and development permit number 2112 for 5335 Woodland Crescent. And once we hear the overview, we will go to that late correspondence as well.
All right. Good afternoon. So this application before council is for a development variance permit along with a multifamily residential development permit. The subject property is located at 5535 Woodland Crescent in the Westport Place subdivision. So the purpose of the two applications is to allow for the construction of 11 three-bedroom residential units. The units will be distributed in 4 buildings with 3 triplex structures and 1 duplex. The duplex is proposed to be located at the entrance of the site facing southwest onto Woodland Crescent. The 0.65 acre property is currently zoned RM1, low density multiple family residential, and is within the multifamily residential development permit area in the OCP. So the applicant has worked with staff to address access, parking, and design issues. The site will be accessed from Woodland Crescent with direct vehicular access to the duplex from Woodland Crescent and access to the triplexes from an internal road. In line with our zoning bylaw, the applicant has allocated the 14 required parking spaces for the 11 units. These are provided through a combination of garage spaces for each unit and on-site visitor parking spaces. With regards to the design, the primary exterior building materials will consist of vinyl siding and painted wood trim, as shown in the renderings. The property will be screened with 5-foot cedar fence with privacy screens between the units. A landscaping plan has also been submitted, and the required landscaping security will be taken prior to the issuance of the development permit should council approve authorize the issuance. So as for the variances, the first is the result of discussions with staff with regards to the siting of buildings. To ensure proper fire separation of buildings, the applicant adjusted the plans and caused the 2 triplex structures closest to Georgia Road to encroach into the rear yard setback. So those would be the 2 triplexes to the north. Rather than the required 9 meters, the rear yard is proposed to be set back 7.5 meters from the property. Staff concluded that no negative impacts were anticipated as a result of the setback reduction. And now for the second variance, it's regarding the frontage, the reduced frontage from 27.192 meters to the from the required 30. So this one, it did come up earlier, but it's simply due to the configuration of the site. The applicant really didn't have much of an option here. The site is currently subdivided as it is, and the boundaries were determined when the site was subdivided years ago. So short of closing the adjacent footpath and consolidating it onto the RM1 lot, it's difficult to find an avenue for compliance with this requirement of the zoning bylaw, and ultimately would have the effect of likely removing any possibility for multifamily development on the site. So staff supports the approval and issuance of both the development variance permit and the multifamily residential development permit. Planning staff have reviewed the design and are satisfied that it meets the intent and, that it meets the goals of the development permit area in the OCP. And also, the requested variances are not anticipated to have any negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood. We've also brought this to the Advisory Planning Commission, and they have also recommended supporting the approval and the issuance. So in your agenda package, you'll find the options available to council with the recommended motions, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions from council? Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It sounds like the developer answered the question regarding on-street parking. And in our agenda package, it does mention Georgia Street, but it doesn't go into any details. Why is there not access off of Georgia? What are the issues behind that?
Ooh, that was a good question. I think Scott would know a little more about why we pushed off that one. Oh.
That is, it's in the regional district, Georgia. They don't allow any access from Woodland Crescent or any houses on Woodland Crescent onto Georgia because it's in a different municipality. That was the kickback we got from going that way. It would have been preferable to access that way, but they just won't allow it.
Because it's in the regional district.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, my only comment is that I know we have one more development application coming up on this agenda as well, and I am so pleased to not see a single family home out of 110 units that are being proposed on this agenda. I think that in a community that has been predominantly developed as a single family home community, it is really nice to see some density. And density in places where it's appropriate. So my first thought looking at this one, I was impressed actually with what, could be done on a reasonably small lot. But I think the developers come up with a proposed design that really is in keeping with what is immediately surrounding it. And also fits in quite well with the fact that, the kind of boundaries of Westport do each have a few higher density townhouses and small apartment buildings. So I think it's a really good fit for the neighborhood, and appreciate the comments earlier, concerns about parking and comments around the strata and how the strata will be able to enforce that. Councillor Corbeil, would you read the motions attached?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council authorize the issuance of development variance permit number 109, and that the Director of Corporate Services be authorized to sign the permit granting the following variances to the zoning bylaw at 5535 Woodland Crescent. A, vary section 5.14.2 site development regulations to permit a reduction of the required frontage from 30 meters to 27.192 meters, a variance of 2.8 meters, and B, vary section 5.14.2 site development regulations to permit a reduction of the required rear yard setback from 9 meters to 7.5 meters, a variance of 1.5 meters.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Paulson. Seeing no final comments, all in favor? Carried. And if you want to continue with the next one.
And further, that council authorize the issuance of development permit number 21-12, and that the Director of Corporate Services be authorized to sign the permit, including the development plans as shown on Schedule B, prepared by Dicon Construction Limited, subject to the City of Port Alberni receiving the required landscaping security in the amount of $21,588.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Solda. Any final comments on this one? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we'll move on to item number 5 on our agenda is the development. From the development planner, we have development permit number 2110.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So for Council's consideration is a development permit at 3553 Anderson Avenue. And this constitutes phase 2 of the Portview Landing development by Broad Street Properties. This is what they're proposing is a multifamily residential development with 93 units total. So it's one apartment building with 63 units and 6 townhouse buildings with 30 units. The apartment building will be 4 stories and the townhouses will each be 2 stories. Here's a site plan, an overview site plan of the development. You can see phase 1 at the corner of Bird and Anderson Avenue. Directly south is proposed phase 2 near the center of the overall parcel, which used to be the old high school site. In 2019, the whole larger property was rezoned to high-density multifamily residential. In 2020, Portview Landing Phase 1 was developed, and that included 141 units, and this development application would enable Phase 2, as I mentioned previously. Here's an overview. Obviously, this is an old photo. It's much more built up now, but you get a sense of where that property lies in relation to the surrounding neighborhoods. And here is a site plan in particular. Over on the east side of the development, we have that apartment building. Then we have these 6 townhouses as you get more towards Anderson Avenue. And then a large common space in the back towards the ridge. Here are the building elevations, very similar to what's already on Phase 1. They have 2 buildings in Phase 1. This will be the 3rd apartment building on the overall site. Here's the townhouses. They're 2 stories each, and I believe there are 2 bedrooms as well. And here is the all the properties are accessed off Anderson Avenue, and all the required parking is provided on site. Highlighted in yellow, we have 138 parking spaces, which is actually more than the zoning bylaw requires. And in terms of the landscaping, they've actually done a really good job at incorporating a lot of trees, plants, and shrubs in the development. And actually their development officer was very vigilant in ensuring there were a lot of trees within their parking lots, and that's really important when you get such a large amount of parking in one place that it's actually very green for the residents who live there. And so they've also included that large common area up near the east side of the development. That's a grassy area. They've got some big trees. They've also got a community garden and a seating area. And they've actually made it wheelchair accessible as well for all residents, because it is going up a little bit of a hill at the back of the property. So this application does meet all the requirements of the OCP and zoning bylaw, and its approval will create 93 dwelling units in the community. Staff support approval of development permit 2110, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Councillor Poon.
I have to say I'm so happy to see more housing options available in our community, and I just wondered, I know that it's probably been discussed before, traffic getting in and out of that property. and how might that be facilitated in the future?
Thank you.
I think I might turn to Scott for this one. He has some more insights into that, how that would happen.
I'm not sure exactly about what happened, but so now, given that the zoning was approved, the rezoning of the overall property would have been the time when the city and council should have been maybe a bit more considerate about what traffic impacts would be and what the developer's responsibility would be to that. Now it will be up to the city to manage, but as further developments occur, this is where it becomes important that we look at those kinds of longer term impacts at the OCP and rezoning stage when we receive applications. I know a traffic study was done for this that I'm aware of, and I believe there was, and it was a study done by the consultant, or by the developer, and I don't believe they triggered any off-site improvements that was requested, and the council of the day accepted that.
Thank you. Additional questions? Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the chair, if I could ask the development planner, and this has gone through so many different phases, I've lost track, but I always thought there was some sort of easement or walkway from Bird Street through to, the ravine, and I don't see it on that map. Is there such a thing?
Yes, I believe in the latest subdivision map, there is actually a path that goes from Bird Street all the way down the east side of that property where it curves and goes all the way down towards Dry Creek Park. Is that correct, Scott? So
you will likely see that graphically when the next portion, so there's on lot, you can't see it, but the one on the corner of Bird and 16th that then goes all the way down south towards there. That's the first part of that is begun construction with a series of duplexes and fourplexes. They have submitted a development application to add to that. When this subdivision recently occurred, part of the subdivision approval process was the requirement for a statutory right-of-way for public access pathway. And during the development permit process, that's where you'll see the design, and it will be required to be a paved public access trail from Bird Street down to some existing trails that the city has next to the Dry Creek Ravine.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Do we know if I'm assuming that the apartment building is intended to be rental apartments. Do we know the intent of the townhouses?
The townhouses will also be rental as well, Madam Mayor.
Great. I just want to say that I think that the company that owns this development has done a great job so far since opening the buildings of managing that site and really making sure that it stays looking fantastic. And I know several people who are renting in those buildings, and just really grateful to have like a clean, nice building to live in that is well run. So looking forward to seeing more of that in our community, and certainly, as mentioned earlier, around housing mix, I think it's really nice to see rental townhouses coming to the community as well.
Yep.
Councillor Poon, would you like to read the motion?
Yes. I'll move that council authorize the issuance of development permit number 21-10, and that the Director of Corporate Services be authorized to sign the permit, including the development plans as shown on Schedule B, prepared by Seymour Pacific Developments Limited, issued for 3553 Anderson Avenue and dated July 2nd, 2021, subject to the City of Port Alberni receiving the required landscaping security in the amount of $184,582.87.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Poon. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Solda. Any additional comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Move on to bylaws. Item number 1, we have from the Director of Finance, the City of Port Alberni 2022 to 2026 Financial Plan, bylaw number 5045-2022.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in front of Council today is the bylaw for the financial plan for 2022-2026. Obviously, we went through the high-level overview last week. at the Committee of the Whole. With that, we highlighted some operational and some capital items. But now it's time for Council to consider the details that we have in front of you today. So we do have a timeline to complete this. That timeline is within the staff report. We do have 4 council meetings remaining and 2 committee of the wholes, one including that E-Town Hall. So as far as question and answers, we will also provide that Q&A that we've done over the past couple of years, just to keep track of the council questions and the public questions that are coming forward. And we're asking that council consider first reading to start the discussion on the financial plan as we move through the next couple months here. So with that, if there's any questions that council has, we can make note of those, or we could address those today.
Okay. Any starting questions from council? Councillor Solda.
Just a couple, Madam Mayor, just for now. There might be more later, but I don't see a sidewalk budget in here. I alluded to that last council meeting, and I must be missing it. I would like to know how much was spent on the sidewalks last year and maintenance. There used to be a budget, and I'm not sure exactly how much it was. It wasn't very much. It's not enough to fix our sidewalks anyways, all of them. And I'm also, if there was money spent on sidewalks, how many meters, and do we still do annual sidewalk walks? We used to do sidewalk walks at one time, and a lot of times I hear it from the public that things need to be fixed on our sidewalks, and I always say to them, hey, there is sidewalk walks. So if we could find out, like I have a report on that if possible. And the other one is the snow removal. How much did we spend last year? Because I kind of looked in here and it just tells me a budget.
We don't have the actuals
Yeah.
yet.
So if I could get the actual, because I'm sure we spent a lot of money, more than the budget, and in the past we haven't spent any money, so it goes away. But so I'm just kind of curious to know what we spent.
Okay,
So,
thank
Madam Mayor, those are good questions, and with the sidewalks, we'll follow up and get you the answers as far as where that is in the financial plan. I'll confirm that with Public Works and make sure that's highlighted. Also with the snow removal, I do have information that we'll provide, and as the Mayor alluded to, we will definitely bring the actuals that we have for 2021 and include those in mid-February once we've done some reconciliations of our accounts.
And sorry, one more thing.
Continue for sure.
And I forgot about this one too, because since I used to live beside the dike, I mean, I have places there. There's a lot of uprooting on the dike, and people are walking that constantly. It's a high-used area for people just to walk. And I'm just kind of curious to know how much work we have done on the walkway, because some of the roots are coming through, not the roots, but grass is coming in. People can trip and there's a liability there, so, which I hate mentioning, but it's true. So I'm kind of curious to know what work we have done. Is there going to be work there? Is there money for that? I know we're tight on that, but it's, again, safety first.
I think we did just recently complete a bit of assessment work on the Consexus pathway because it is so popular. So staff could bring that to a future meeting for sure, more specifically on that.
Okay, and I think that's all my little notes that I wrote to myself at the moment. I think the sidewalks was about 110 budget at one point, but that's still not a lot for our sidewalks, which are aging pretty fast. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson.
Twyla, I just wonder if you could bring up page number 96, and Joseph, this is for you. Just maybe to highlight the opportunities for public engagement in the budget, page 9, no, you went by it. No. It's just a chart of dates for the meetings and so on.
Right there.
Yeah, just for anybody who's watching, and I know, Joseph, you're particularly interested in community engagement, so just maybe touch on the Committee of the Wholes in particular and the dates and stuff, and that would be great.
So, Madam Mayor, with the regular council meeting, usually it's a more formal process, but with the committee of the wholes, that's a great opportunity for the public and council to dive into the financial plan and provide that input. So a more informal process that allows for that discussion and kind of dives into those finer details of the financial plan.
Thank you.
So mark them in your calendar.
Twyla, are you able to comment on meeting times? I know that typically our committee of the wholes are at 4 p.m., regular council meetings at 2 p.m. We usually try to have 1 or 2 budget meetings additionally in the evening, so just wondering if we have time set for these yet or not.
Absolutely. So as you note, RCMs are at 2 o'clock. Our committee of the wholes are at 4, and the March 7th committee of the whole meeting, the E-Town Hall, will be at 7. I can also comment our next City Connect ad that will be in the newspaper has all of these dates captured in a clear ad, including the times of the meetings, so it'll act as a reminder for the community. And just to elaborate a little further, council will always take input on the budget, either in written form, attending at the meetings, regardless of the meeting structure per se, but just so that you know that it's council will take comments at all times.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Andrew.
Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for our corporate officer, the meeting on March the 7th, the E-Town Hall, we'll be present here as a council, and will spectators or people be allowed in the gallery along, or is it just going to be electronic for input?
No, absolutely. Council is expected to be here in chambers. We were thinking of structuring it similar to the webinars when we used to do Zoom. And if you recall in the past, we've actually had people connecting to our Facebook page and asking questions, and then we would restate those questions here in the meeting. This is actually going to be a forum where the members of the public can ask the questions directly through the webinar structure. So that's what we're trying to accomplish on that day.
I was just concerned about some people aren't E-Town or electronically,
yeah.
you know, would rather come in as a person, so.
And they can still be
as long as they're
seen.
welcome, that's great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and can also do that, as Twyla mentioned, at any of our committee of the wholes, or public input period at the beginning of our meetings, or question period at the end of the meetings, or by emails to council@portalberni.ca. That's right, or call us at home. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm just curious more on, so today, process-wise, we are just introducing the budget with first reading. Next opportunity is the regular council meeting in 2 weeks. So it says staff to formally respond to comments and questions from previous committee of the whole and regular council meeting. I mean, obviously council has this already. The public has it because it was included in our agenda, which went out Thursday. Will we be going through, you know, specific highlighted items that have changed from previous years, or what is the structure for us to actually dive into the budget aside from on our own personally and bringing questions?
Yeah, great question, Madam Mayor. So with that, we'll look at the committee of the whole meeting to go through in section by section, kind of discuss those changes that we've made. And as you look at that document, there has been changes in some line items. As mentioned last week, we're seeing, you know, just the averages that we have been incurring over the past few years, or some of the CPI impacts or cost escalation that we're seeing in certain line items. And if there is a shift in how we do business, we're including that in there so that council can understand and the public can understand those changes that are made year over year. And then when it comes to the capital, we want to make sure that we start diving into the capital projects. A lot of our capital projects are associated with the CSOs that we're doing, our liquid waste management plan, a lot of regulatory work, and then we're just upgrading that road at the same time. So some of those projects, or if we have other initiatives that are ongoing, we'll provide more details to those. And that's the opportunity that we start that engagement with council as far as those details, and maybe pull out some more questions that council has or the public have.
Okay, thank you. Another question from myself. I see that the ladder truck, I've been getting a lot of questions about the ladder truck lately. I see that it's not in 2022. I think it's 2023 capital. Is that just anticipating that that's when we would receive it? or are we putting off that purchase an additional year to order?
Madam Mayor, with that one, it is a purchase that we, because of the time it takes, we anticipate it occurring in 2023.
Receiving it in 2023 or making the commitment to purchase in 2023?
The actual payment for the unit in 2023, those are, a staff report will be coming for that. So.
Okay, great. Understanding that there's a staff report coming, I also recognize that it says in here 1.39 million. 1.319 million, which is less than the last amount we had discussed. So has that just figure not been updated yet, or do we have previous funds put aside?
Madam Mayor, with that question, what we do is we have the Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund, so the ERF as we call it, and that is the funding that we have out of ERF based on the contributions that were made. So in the prior year's budget, it was 1.2 something, 1.293, and now this year with that additional payment, there's more ERF that's supplying for that because of the cost escalation that's anticipated. Those are the amounts that we had in the financial plan. I know we indicated that there might be a higher cost incurred, but we haven't brought that detail to council, and when we do, that will be for council to consider as far as the cost of that unit.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Solda.
Just one further thing regarding McLean's Mill. I noticed that there's the operator agreement and the city operations and that. Are we going to, well, I will be asking for a detailed report, I hope, you know, regarding McLean's Mill. The world changed 2 years ago, and, you know, I would like to see expenditures, and I'd just like to see some stats on McLean's Mill. And so if that, just giving you the heads up.
Madam Mayor, that Councillor Solda made that request, and we are looking at that with the Chamber of Commerce, and we are targeting to have them come to the Committee of the Whole meeting to provide their overview of the 2021 year and their upcoming request.
Okay, great. Other questions? Councillor Corbeil.
Just for clarity, at the next meeting, we'll have department managers to answer questions regarding whether it's Parks and Rec or the fire department, things like that. Am I correct?
Madam Mayor, with that question, Councillor Corbeil, what we will have is the opportunity to ask questions, and we'll have the follow-up in our Q&A as we normally do. It's not where we'd have budget managers come up and talk to certain line items, but if you have a question or an item, we ask that you provide that question, and we have follow-up, and we bring the response to council.
So you're suggesting, and I've got lines all over the place on this thing, I should just bundle those up and send you an email, and you can get them out to the appropriate managers for answers?
Madam Mayor, I'd appreciate if that is the case. That would be helpful to organize the response and provide that in written form also.
And you're welcome to use this opportunity as well if there's specific questions. If you've got them organized and want to send them in an email, that's great. But you're also welcome to ask them here to be brought back to a future meeting.
I've got quite a few questions, actually. I'll put them all together in an email and send them in.
Okay, that's great. Okay. Additional comments? Okay. I just want to highlight the significant change in, I think, what is really just a change in focus around children and youth programming. I know that over the last year or so, we've really started to put more of a focus on really just quality programming for children, certainly, but also for youth in our community, which was something that I think was really lacking for a long time. And just want to appreciate both Willa Thorpe, our Director of Parks, Recreation and Heritage, and Sean, the Director of Recreation, because they both seem to just be super passionate about, you know, providing great programs for youth in the community. And I think that's something that's been lacking for a long time, and you can see it in the difference of you know, $4,500 in revenue coming in versus $30,000 in revenue, and recognizing that a lot of the youth programs we offer are free. So yeah, just definitely more of a focus, and really nice to see. And I've heard positive comments from a lot of parents in our community who are seeing a difference as well. Okay, if there's no other questions for today, then Councillor Paulson, would you like to make first reading?
Yeah, I'd like to do first reading. That'll lead to more fulsome discussion later. I'd like to move that the City of Port Alberni 2022 to 2026 Financial Plan Bylaw number 5045, 2022 be now introduced and read a first time.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Poon. Seeing no comments, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no correspondence for action today and no proclamations, so we'll move on to correspondence for information. And I'm just realizing that we forgot to formally review the late correspondence that we had from Catherine. So Twyla, if you don't mind just highlighting that here as well, that'd be great. And we can receive it here.
So Council, Correspondent Summary is as follows. You have correspondence from Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, and they're following up with regards to the meeting held at UBCM. Correspondence from BC Epilepsy Society regarding International Purple Day on March 26th, 2022. Communications from Ms. Proctor regarding council remuneration, and you will recall that she was in attendance at the last meeting and spoke directly to that. Correspondence from Vancouver Island Crisis Society updating on the call to council to correspond on their behalf about an RFP process and the desire to have direct award with their service contracts. Audit Committee minutes are there, as well as correspondence from Port Alberni Community Action Team and NTC. And I need to add to that list by way of email from CMHA, who was also supportive of public washroom facilities. And then to acknowledge our late item from Catherine regarding the DVP for Woodland.
Thank you very much. Are there any items councillors would like to speak to? Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The last two, F and G, F and item G, about the public washrooms. As we have a city, have we ever formally gone to other communities to see communities that do have a public washroom open 24/7 and find out the costs, the pros and the cons? Have we ever explored that?
I have. There's some really great examples of just innovative types of public washrooms that are in downtown areas. Both Smithers and Nelson have what's called a Portland Loo, which is really like designed for downtowns. With just, I mean, you could look it up and they've got some really great information about why it works for a downtown and why it's designed as it is. I think that what has stopped us, and I think there's two separate issues here. These letters are speaking to a public washroom open 24/7. I think there's a need for a public washroom open 24/7 in the 4th Avenue area. And I think there's also a need for a public washroom in the 3rd Avenue uptown area. But I think those are probably different needs. I think that if we're talking about a public washroom in, the 4th Avenue areas near the overdose prevention site, we probably need a good partner to help us manage that. Because I don't think it's the kind of thing that, I think it's the kind of thing that would require a lot of oversight, really regular cleaning, really regular checking to make sure that, that it's being managed in a way that doesn't cause people more harm potentially. And then I think if we're talking about a public washroom in the uptown area, we might be able to achieve that through our public safety building. I know we've got some plans around washroom access in the public safety building, but I think that's almost a different issue and not necessarily a 24/7 need. The Bread of Life is open 24/7 and they have a public washroom. So yeah, I think there's a bit of a confusing of really what the needs are in these letters, but my feeling based on what they're asking for is that it is more in the 4th Avenue area that they would be looking for. And I think if there's an organization, possibly one of these, or someone who sits on the community action team who wanted to partner with the city, then there's definitely some options. I had a great call with BC Housing recently where they talked about portable washroom units that they're offering to some communities, and we might be able to get one of those potentially for free in the community, and then we really just have to talk about what it looks like to manage it. So I think there's some really good examples, and if it's something that council wants to explore, we can start those conversations.
Well, you nailed it on the head when you said the partnership part, because I know us as a community, we can't afford something like this, but I'd love to go to, say, the New Chalmers and just say, hey, they cost this much, are you interested in partnering with us?
Yeah.
I just want to keep the ball rolling, because there is a definite need, both in Uptown and on 4th Avenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Twyla, are you able to speak to the public safety building for the Uptown part of it and what the plan is around a washroom there?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So yes, the public safety building would see a public accessible washroom right in the front entranceway in the lobby area. But as Mayor Minion's pointed out, that would likely be available during office hours and not a 24/7 basis, but definitely a handicap accessible washroom as a public facility.
Yeah. And I think that we've heard from some of the Uptown merchants that there's definitely a need, especially during COVID, for people coming into their businesses to have an alternative option for washrooms. So I feel like that public safety building option is going to satisfy that side of it. I think what we still have in our community is certainly a 24/7 washroom facility need, but that should be focused where the people in our community who are homeless are, and that currently is in the 4th Avenue area. And obviously there are people in our community struggling in the 3rd Avenue area as well, but they either are, residents probably of the Harborview apartments or at the Bread of Life where there are already washrooms. So I think it's more that 4th Avenue core that really we need to look at something for, and we've had a lot of concerns from merchants down there as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I know that our representative on the community action team is Councillor Haggard, and I think she'll probably be away for the next meeting. I'm not sure if we have an alternate there.
I think I'm the alternate.
Okay, so Councillor Poon, it might be a great start for you at that next meeting to just express Council's willingness to have a conversation about what a public washroom could look like. Responding to this letter, we certainly could send an email and offer to have a conversation. I could join you in that as well.
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, great. Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Washington?
You said Nelson, what was the other one to look at? Smithers, thank you.
Yeah, and it's called the Portland Loo. And there's probably several other communities who, have Uptown washrooms, but that one was just very intentionally designed to be a 24/7 washroom that is easy to clean, safe to be in, and focused around downtown areas. Councillor Poon.
I'm going to be in Nelson this weekend. I'll send some photos.
I've got a ridiculous amount of photos of that washroom. more photos of a washroom I ever thought I would have. But it is really, really unique in how it's designed, and I've heard a lot of great feedback about it. Any other items of correspondence people would like to speak to? Okay, seeing none, then would somebody like to move receipt of our correspondence?
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Poon. All in favor? Carried. We have no report from in camera. Councillor reports. Are there any items councillors would like to highlight? Okay, seeing nothing specific. New business. Any items councillors would like to raise for new business? Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is it possible to get a report from the engineering department, a timeline for road line painting? I think it's long overdue. I had to be a designated driver a couple nights ago, and like even 3rd Avenue, it's hard to focus in the dark, in the rain, because the lines are virtually non-existent down past the pulp mill and up 3rd Avenue. And I know even in other areas it's the same. We're sort of a little behind in painting lines.
I think road line or line painting is something that we do on an ongoing basis, and I think we have a contract company that does it, and we only do kind of parking stalls ourselves, but certainly something that the Director of Engineering could just maybe bring even a verbal report at our next meeting to give a bit of an update on what we do and if it's been delayed for any reason. Councillor Paulson.
Just to comment on that, just going back, our Director of Engineering informed us, I think earlier in the painting season, that there's a supply problem. They can't get paint, and it's not the same kind of paint as you use on your house, but through COVID, whether it be vehicles or whatever, but line paint has been a problem, and the Department of Highways expressed the same thing. There's many areas on Highway 4 that won't get done this year because they can't get product. And I'm sure as soon as we get product, we'll get the paint down there, buddy. You and me with the paintbrushes.
Thank you. Any other items of, oh, Scott, go ahead.
Well, and I do recall the same discussion, and even to the point where our Director of Engineering was saying they're looking at options for other suppliers of paint. So I think last year probably we fell behind on some of our line painting, and certainly that'll be something we'll look to get up to get more ahead this year. But I do know that did come up at a previous meeting, but I also knew that he was also looking at options instead of just going with the same supplier, just not relying on one supplier and looking at various options so that we don't run into that same issue this summer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Solda.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I get asked that a lot, and because it's so dark out. But although I remember that discussion, I also say it's winter, snow. I mean, nobody's going to go and line paint in the snow, so summer's coming, so, or early spring. So, yeah, so patience.
Thank you. And that brings us to question period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. Would either member of public like to come forward? You don't have to state your name.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Just a couple quick comments and then questions. And thank you for all sitting for so long. If you want to stand up and kind of give a stretch, would probably be a good thing. I'd be kind of sore. I'm getting sore back there. Yeah. Okay, good. So a couple comments earlier about the snow removal stuff in the sidewalks, just to bring that forward. A little bit unprepared, and to really present that well, and also to being aware there's only 3 minutes. And one other thing, what else? There's something, if this is a appropriate place to bring it up or not. So a little bit nervous. So a couple different things kind of fell into that. So not great. So again, finding a better place maybe to bring that up, or the 3-minute thing, or just finding a place to do that. So hopefully I'd be a bit more relaxed or prepared. That's probably a big part of it. So that's well laid out, and mentioning a few of the businesses that are really key in the community that aren't, and then publicly owned or city-owned land that's not being done too, and private. So there's a mixture of things there. Anyhow, that could have been done much better, just to bring a clearer awareness of it. So that's one comment. The other comment is, because it is awkward standing up front, you do get a little nervous, and knowing that you might be, I think it's recorded on camera, so there's another thing. A previous place that I lived in, and I think this has been done in Port Alberni in the past, was meeting with mayor and council, coffee with mayor and council. They'd have once a month where you can sit down. The mayor wasn't there each time. It would be a council member acting as mayor and one council member. And it was an opportunity, really, really casual, a very relaxed atmosphere, sitting down having a cup of coffee with a couple of council members, and mayor would show up once in a while. And it was once a month. And it was just an opportunity for community groups, people to come in and sit down and actually be able to express something in a very relaxed manner, back and forth dialogue a little bit. Really, to me, it was a great asset. So that's just a comment. So now I have 2 questions. First one, council was turned from, I think it was 6 or 7 in the evening to 2 o'clock. This committee of the whole is at 4 o'clock. This one's at 2. So I arrived today thinking, okay, 2 o'clock, I've made it, no problem. Where do you park? 2 to 6 p.m., you've got or from 9 till 6 p.m., you've got a 2-hour limit. Okay, a 2 o'clock meeting, I've got 2 hours. Am I going to get ticketed? So where do I park? We've got commercial all around. We've got city property. That's a 2-hour limit in city property. So you have to find outside of that some place to park. So since it is 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock meeting, fine. You've got 2 hours at 6. You're not going to get ticketed. But at 2 o'clock, if they're checking, you're going to get ticketed. So is it something that city would say, okay, just put a note on your windshield, you're at a council meeting, the bylaw officer, he happens to come by, he's not going to give you a ticket. So just to allow that. But again, we don't want to clog businesses and places that come in, people come into City Hall to do things. You don't want to plug those up. I don't want to plug up somebody's business either by coming to a council meeting, because I'm going to be here for a little longer than that, whatever. So key times of the day. So how do you address that issue? Can park further away, can tell everybody park further away, it might deter people from coming out. So there's the question, what can we do about that? Can I put a note on my windshield to make sure I don't get a ticket? Would that be one thing?
That's a really great observation, so thank you for that. I can tell you that you are not going to get a ticket currently, but because we currently don't have parking enforcement, and that is only temporary, and we're actually going to have, I know we're supposed to not say that,
right.
but because the key with parking enforcement is people thinking you have it.
Right.
No, it is something that we are going to be reviewing in the future, and we actually had discussed as a council reviewing where some of our parking times, where some of the restrictions are, and where they may not work for the businesses they're in front of as well. So this is a really great example in front of our own operation of a time that just doesn't work. Right. So for now, you're absolutely good. But in the future, that's something that we're going to review on a larger scale, how we want to do parking enforcement, because we obviously are, short term without somebody actually doing that role for us.
Super, thank you. And the second question, by me, am I allowed a second question perhaps? Yep. I live near Johnson, so again, I'm walking all the time, so I notice a lot of things. And I'm sure this has been discussed before. It seems to me I've heard it either through the newspaper, perhaps something, or through the media, or through a council meeting. Johnson Street being a 4-lane highway through the middle of town has probably always been an ongoing issue with safety, traffic flow, different things. And at the bottom of the hill, which is a large hill, you can pick up a lot of speed coming down that. There's an elementary school, there's crosswalks. Now they have you can push the button at the elementary school and cross there. That's, can't remember the name, Helen, I think it is, Helen. And you can push that, it's safer. The other ones down that you cross between businesses is a very walkable kind of an area. You've got a lot of small little shops and stuff. To cross a crosswalk down there is treacherous. A lot of people stop, some won't. You might have you're in your lane crossing, and those 2 cars might stop. And the next one, that third lane will stop. You're taking your life in your hands, stepping out in front of the next car, because that person's not paying any attention. I've had it numerous times where I step out, I look before I step out in front of any car beyond, even though that one stopped, I'm not assuming the next car in the next lane is going to. So I don't know if bypass has ever been spoken about. That's a big issue with businesses and different things. So, but with a long-range plan as a bypass, something in the things, and I think there's been talk of traffic calming, some way of slowing down the traffic on Johnson. So just a question, and just to clarify, again, this is probably not the right setting for it. Community Hall might be a better place. But to say for knowledge for myself and some others that may not know, are there any plans to do something about Johnson and its safety for sure?
Yeah, thank you. So a couple things. Firstly, I would say that pedestrian safety is one of the major focuses of this council, and you'll see it consistently throughout our strategic plan, which is really the guiding document that we work from. Slow vehicle traffic, make pedestrian safety a priority. We've done some intersection reviews over the last year or two in partnership with ICBC to see where our most dangerous intersections are for pedestrian and cyclists. And we've got plans to move forward with making changes to some of those intersections. Additional to that, a few years ago, we did what was called the Johnston Road Charrette. I think that was in 2017. And that was really a process that kind of did a bit of an overview of what do we want Johnston Road to be. And I always remember one of the main quotes that kind of came through out of that was, Johnston Road does a great job of getting people through town, but is that really what we want? We want to slow people down. We don't want them to just whip through our community and leave and cause us all sorts of problems with pedestrian safety. And you're absolutely right, talking about those lower Johnston intersections and crossing that, effectively 6 lanes with the parking on the side where people are just driving as fast as they want sometimes is very uncomfortable as a pedestrian. So following our strategic plan and the Johnston Road Charrette, we did myself and Councillor Paulson, sent by Council, for the last 3 years in a row have gone to the provincial government at UBCM as just one opportunity to meet with the Ministry of Transportation, bringing those issues specifically forward. Following the first year we went, they did offer to do a traffic study and kind of a high-level redesign of what Johnston Road could look like. We have that information with 3 options. The provincial government, Ministry of Transportation, hasn't made it public yet, so we're not able to share it. But plans are underway for how do we, as a focus, make those intersections on Lower Johnston Road not focus so much around how do we get cars quickly through our community, but more how do we make sure pedestrians can safely cross streets in our community, and then functionally how do we get cars through our community and moving around safely in our community. So that work is underway. We are also working with the Ministry of Transportation just around the corner from there on the Beaver Creek and River Road intersection. So those two kind of sections were a part of the same study that was done by the province, and it looks like the Beaver Creek Road intersection work is going to be completed sooner, so that's kind of been the focus. Last time we followed up with the Ministry of Transportation, however, they talked about starting some public engagement in the community for Lower Johnston Road and what that would look like. So it's not going to be immediately changed, but you know, larger scale, longer term, we've already begun kind of plans with the ministry about how do we make those crosswalks work better? How do we calm traffic, and how do we still obviously make the roads effective for people driving? So thank you for bringing that forward. Okay. Dan, you're here also. Would you like to speak? Come on forward if you'd like to ask a question.
As you can well tell, I'm not used to this. But I am still very upset about the increases you folks all gave yourself. I'd like to know, when you decide to do something like that, which I thought for a part-time job, man, I worked my ass off and never got 40%. Just saying. Where does that money come from? When you get your paycheck for this job, where does that money come from?
Okay. First of all, I would say that my job is not a part-time job.
Well, maybe yours isn't, but
our salaries, our stipends are in the budget just like anything else. So it all comes from taxation. And the 40% increases, I know we did talk about this last time you came to council, but the 40% increases are not effective for this council. They are effective for the next council who the community elects. So we have not given ourselves raises, but totally recognize your concerns. And I would say that we share them. We don't want to be the ones responsible for choosing what our salary levels are either. It's uncomfortable, and unfortunately it's the only way that the province sets out in the community charter for local government elected officials to determine wages is determining them themselves. So it puts us in an awkward and difficult position as well.
yeah, and I think that the taxes are fairly high for this town. Is this a city or a town?
City.
Okay, so I think the taxes are fairly high for this city, and I just think it's a shame that whoever is looking after our affairs for us, I thought they were doing that because they actually wanted to be of use to the people of the town or city or whatever. I thought it was a job that you took because that was your calling or whatever. And now it is. It is a money-making deal. And some places like, this is not Parksville, that's for sure. And I know that we do need a lot of other things. I've only been here 5 years, but still, you can see that the town needs help. When I got here, frankly, I thought it was a dying town. Now, I certainly don't think it now. But I just don't understand how somebody can have that, get that much money, and the taxpayer has got to go good for that and has no say. I can stand here and bellyache about it all I want, but I can't physically do anything that can stop that. That doesn't really seem very democratic to me. Does it to you? I'm just wondering. Is it democratic to do that? No.
Okay, thank you. first of all, happy to hear that you're seeing some improvements in our community since you moved here. That's wonderful. I am not sure if there's really a question there, but just to reaffirm again, we have not given raises to ourselves. We have given raises to the next council. The salary levels were set out based on comparables of, I think, 14 different similar municipalities. So this is not just a number that was chosen out of thin air. It is, just for clarity, I believe going from $17,000 a year for a councillor up to $24,000, and I think it's going from $41,000 for the mayor up to $59,000. So it is not, sometimes, and I clarify that because I run into people in the public sometimes who think that I am paid, for instance, or that councillors are paid similar to our senior managers. And, they see that a senior manager is making $170,000 a year and assume that council is as well, and that's certainly not the case. So understanding that we have a difference of opinion on, whether people should be paid for these roles or not, I would say that if you're worried about it being a democratic or not democratic process, the opportunity is for you to vote in an election, and that's really when you get to have your say or run in an election yourself as well. Although I think you expressed last time when you made this, when you brought these concerns forward, that you don't know why anyone would want to do these roles.
Well, I certainly understand that part of it. I did do a lot of volunteer work in my younger days, and it's a thankless job. I also drove a coach, like a Greyhound, and dealing with the public, I know you never satisfy everybody, that's for sure. But still, at the same instance, I'm thinking when you get up and do a job from 5 o'clock in the morning until 9:30 at night, and you do not make any more than, say, $34,000 a year, this whole thing is just obscene to me. However, I think most of you probably will get your positions again. So actually, you really do give your own self a raise, don't you think? And I'm glad nobody come and burnt my house down because I was so angry when I wrote the letter. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you for being here, Diane. Okay, seeing no other members of the public in the audience to ask questions today, would somebody like to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Poon. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.